Hello, and welcome to another episode of Cupcakes Comics Reviews. We are here as the International Collective of Cupcakes on our channel. We have three of us here tonight, and we're going to talk about the comics that we picked up this week and what we read. So just to introduce us real fast. First, we have hailing from Scotland, we have Connor Craig. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did mostly.
Okay. I'm always nervous about that now because there's the whole controversy of how to pronounce it.
Yeah, it's a whole thing, but no, that was a pretty good effort.
Okay.
I give that a pass.
And then hailing from the northeastern of America, the northeast side, we have Paperback Dan. Paperback Dan, how you doing?
What's up, Cupcakes? I'm good. It's good to see you guys.
All right, so just real quick, here at the Cupcake Comic Review, our channel is kind of a collective group, a cupcake collective, if you will. We're kind of like, I like to describe us as like the Wu-Tang Clan of comic reviewers. So we have like a baker's dozen of us or so that are in this group that from time to time will pop in on the channel and talk about the things we love to talk about, which are comics. So that's what we do here. So please give us a like and subscribe and comment down below with any thoughts that you have regarding anything we talk about today. But like I said, today we are going to talk about comics we picked up because it's Wednesday. This is our Wednesday Warrior episode. And we picked up some stuff, collected editions, single issues, that kind of thing. We're going to kind of go around our round table here, talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and that kind of stuff. So, Connor, why don't you kick us off today? What did you pick up today? What did you like from the racks?
So today, I picked up mostly DC. It was a very DC heavy week. Unfortunately, no indies. But yeah. I'm one of those big two guys. Not really, big one. So I've got a mixed bag this week. So like to start off with, the way I'll speak about them is go from like my least favorite to my favorite, like my pick of the week.
Oh, build up the suspense. I like it.
Yeah. So to begin with, I'd say that my least favorites this week, and this isn't my favorite cover of the week, but it did stand out to me, was 2 issues of Black Manta, so 1 and 2. It is a 6-issue mini-series, and it's okay. I can't say I love it. It's very much this sort of thing where we spoke about this last week, but I very much like the route that DC's taken with this new mini-series format. It really does help the accessibility. But unfortunately, this series is one that I've kind of I've seen a drawback in the sense that there's a lot of kind of random plot points, but I don't know where it all is. I feel like you'll need to have all 6 to justify the first 1 or 2. Because by issue 6, it all may come together. But initially, especially the first issue, I wasn't very sure. It just seemed a lot of random stuff was happening. I was kind of surprised by the route it took. I didn't expect Black Manta series to be the way it is. Issue 2, I thought maybe, okay, they might take some of those plot points and develop them. And they did, but not in a way that connected them all that much. And it just felt a bit, ropey. It didn't, as I say, it didn't really pull me in. That said, I should say that it's written by Chuck Brown, and the artist, and I don't want to destroy this, but Valentin Delandro. The art is magnificent, though. It's a very simple style, but as you can see by the issue 1 cover, it really did stand out. The purple kind of really brought out, and it's this, and they do the interior and the covers, so it was a good like selling point. But that was definitely my least engaging read of the week. But other one that I didn't really like, and people probably won't be surprised by this, was Amazing Spider-Man 77. Now, I got a lot to say about Spider-Man, and I'm going to save the bulk of it for another video, but this issue lost me. So there's been 3 issues of this new run so far, and the first 2 issues written by Zeb Wells. The first one lost me. The second one had me. This one's lost me again. it's just, this issue is just a lot of nothing. There's just nothing, and everything it offers has already been done in previous Spider-Man runs. There's nothing original about it.
Who's the writer then? You said Zeb Wells. It's two of them?
So Kelly Thompson writes this issue.
Okay.
The last two have been written by Zeb Wells because they're doing the 3 times monthly. And you feel that, like, that definitely, I felt that in this issue, because it felt like the first 2 issues kind of had a steady pace and it was building. This issue is so much talking and regurgitating previous plot points, or hammering home plot points that were already kind of sold to you. The artist for this issue as well is Sara Pichelli, and I'm normally a fan of her, but this issue again took me aback a wee bit because Ben Reilly is obviously playing a Spider-Man in this. He doesn't look anything like he did the last 2 issues. It really baffled me. The last 2 issues,
who's the artist on the last 2?
Patrick Gleason.
Oh, okay. So is this? Sorry, I know we talked about this in the chat before. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
no.
They're doing 3 issues a month of Amazing Spider-Man.
Yes.
I don't understand that. Like you brought up the point about how they're running out of ideas. You think the worst thing they could do, I mean, obviously they don't think that either, but if they were to realize that and be self-aware, you think the worst thing to do would be do more issues per month if that was the case?
Yeah. I mean, like, it's really baffling me because they have like the tiniest, like there's a glimmer in there of like a good idea, but like, so this one's like, it's kind of called Spider-Man Beyond, but it's literally just Parker Industries and the entire like idea of Superior Spider-Man being like this techno Spider-Man. Like, it's just regurgitated. It's just the same thing again, and it's like Peter sidelined again, who probably will inevitably come back as like the greatest Spider-Man, but it's nothing. And as I say, this issue, like, I don't know if it's the 3 issues a month. As I agree with you, it's far too much. It's far too much. But, and the Kelly Thompson, she's a good writer. This is written fine. It's just that there's just nothing. It feels like she's been given, like, this is what you have to kind of do it. And she's just kind of filled a hole with, and trying to patch it together. Again, the thing is, if this one felt so disjointed, just mainly because Ben Reilly looks so different to what he did the last 2 issues. In the last 2 issues with Patrick Gleason, he had this strong blonde hair and was kind of like bulky, This issue made him look really slender, and like he had like brown hair and curly hair, and I just was like, what? When he took off his mask the first time, I was like, I'm baffled by this. It just really disjointed, and it just really wasn't impressive at all.
Just on the, sorry, but the hair color, that kind of blows. Is there different colorists on these 2 issues too?
I believe there is, because at the back, Nick Lowe discusses the return of, let's see, fuck, I can't see. I think the new colorist is coming back next week. There's basically been a colorist on the first 2 issues, and because they kind of hyped that up, and it looked amazing. Like I've never seen Patrick Gleason's art look like that. Patrick Gleason's art was really popped in those first 2 issues. It was kind of surprising because I've read a lot of Patrick Gleason and likes of Batman and Robin and their Superman run with Peter J. Tomasi, and Gleason's run with Nick Spencer looked like art that he had drawn. It was the same consistency as his Batman and Robin stuff. His first 2 issues with Zeb Wells, it looked nothing like what he's drawn before. It looked really original, and it was really it was a good way to start the series. It really lured you in. But yeah, like, it's, as I say, I'm normally a huge fan of Sara Pichelli. She did Ultimate Spider-Man, and I loved that series with Miles Morales, and this one was just didn't fit the memo at all. It just continues my opinion that Spider-Man is an absolute mess right now and sorely needs saved. But again, those the other things I'll say about that, I'll save for another video. So now we're on our my middle, okay, these are pretty good. So the first one I'll say of that is DC versus Vampires. I bought this because it's Halloween. It's written by James Tynion, and it's drawn by Otto Schmidt. And I love Otto Schmidt's art. He did a run on Green Arrow that I absolutely with a Benjamin Percy that I absolutely adored. His art was incredible on it. It's an okay issue. It's weird because it's a 1 of 12. I don't know how regularly it's coming out, but it reads like an issue 1. It reads like, okay, this is the start of this big story. But for a Halloween issue, I kind of expected more. Just more bang for the buck. It just felt like a prologue of sorts. So it was okay. I don't know if I pick it up, to be honest. I think I would recommend waiting for the trade. It just didn't really read like something that was you needed.
Are you going to get the second issue?
I don't think I will. I think, again, I picked that up because it's Halloween. I thought, cool, it's a Halloween read. And in the end, yeah, it was a good issue, don't get me wrong. But it didn't fill that gap that I thought it was going to. I thought, okay, they're releasing it Halloween week to give me that sort of horror vibes for Halloween, and I just didn't. It was just okay. As I say, I didn't feel the bang for the buck.
With it being a 1 of 12, I wonder if the idea then would be for the 12th issue to come out next Halloween.
That's what I thought, but I don't know. Basing it on the first issue, I don't know if it could hold interest for a whole year. I mean, I definitely, again, I picked this up because it's Halloween. Do I want to read this horror story at Christmas time or Valentine's month? It fits the theme this month. I don't know. It was kind of weird that DC have been releasing some graphic novels recently. I really would have liked to have seen this just be like an original graphic novel and just released it as a full 12, which I know is a lot of work, to be fair. So, I can understand why they didn't do that, but I don't know if it is like 1 monthly. I can't see it. I can't see it holding my interest at the very least until the last issue, and I can see that for other people. That said, trade paperback wise, 100% I would read it. I think it was an interesting enough issue that I was like, oh, I'd like to read more, but waiting and not Halloween, it just doesn't really fit. So yeah. So the next issue I have is another DC one called Deep Target, and that's a Green Arrow Aquaman kind of series. It's because it's their anniversary. They kind of randomly just put the two together rather than giving them their own sort of anniversary mini-series. That's what I believe is happened.
They needed more room for another Batman comic book. So
essentially,
those two together.
Yeah. So this was written by...
Is that a number 1? Did you say that?
Yeah, that was a number 1.
Okay, I thought so, but I wasn't familiar with what the book even was supposed to be. I just saw it on the rack.
Mm-hmm.
Saw this solicited, and I assumed, just because of the history behind the hard traveling heroes with Green Arrow, Green Lantern, I assume that's what they're kind of going with, like, oh, let's pair up Green Arrow with another hero and have them go on their... Have you read Hard Traveling Heroes with Dean O'Neill and Neil Adams, Connor?
I haven't.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask your opinion on comparing the two, but you should read those. They're amazing comics. It's an amazing run. Obviously, you've probably heard about it, so...
I've heard good things also. I've heard good things, but honestly, the pairing doesn't really interest me too much. Like, I'd rather read about both of those guys individually than as a team. Like, I'm sure the dynamic is interesting, but I don't know, something about like that combination just doesn't really appeal to me.
Well, here's the thing, though, and Dan, I know you prefer your comics to stay apolitical, or you know, like very political comics. It is a very political comic, but the great thing about it is it does it so well because it presents both perspectives. So it's not like just a leftist, pounding home the leftist views and a right winger pounding. It's like you get both perspectives because like they present it as Green Lantern is like the right wing guy and Green Arrow is like the left wing guy. So you get like this. And they present them both on a fair platform too, because like you'll have yourself thinking like each issue kind of siding with one or the other, and that's not all it is, but it is a very political comic book. That's why whenever there's the argument over politics and comics, like people present that one like, well, it's been happening since the 70s. but it's just it's a great buddy cop kind of comic too, because you get not only just their political views, but just like their backgrounds, with Green Lantern being more of a space kind of hero and Green Arrow being more of a street level one.
Right.
They present those on a level playing field too, so you get like kind of the perspective of like one of the early issues, Green Lantern's talking about how he saved all these alien races or whatever, and on all these different planets, and then there's like this black guy on the street, and he's like, well, you saved all the blue people and the purple people, what have you done for the black man? And that's when Green Lantern's like, yeah, like I guess I do need to focus in on Earth since I'm an Earthling kind of thing. It's an amazing run, and it holds up very well today. And I think for you not liking political comics, it might be one of the more ones that you do like, just because it does have both sides presented on a fair platform.
Right. Yeah. No, I'd say that again. I don't really care too much about like the whole political commentary thing, but the fact that it's not like, or that it won't feel one-sided, I think I would appreciate more.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, you don't get any of that from this comic.
That's what I was going to ask you, is if it was kind of the same theme or idea, but
well, the thing is like, so recent. One of the reasons I picked up, I'm a fan of Aquaman. I quite like Aquaman, but I can't say I've read a lot of his older stuff. I've read like obviously the Jeff Johns run and onwards. But Green Arrow recently, I read the Longbow Hunters Omnibus, Mike Grell. That is amazing. I really loved that, and so I've kind of found appreciation for Green Arrow. And that with Benjamin Percy's run on Green Arrow as well, which I really enjoyed. I've kind of really gotten into him. So these two characters, I thought, oh, well, it's a random pair up. I'll give it a shot and see what I think. And again, it's like a middling issue. It's okay. It's more fun. Like, without spoiling, there's kind of a thing it does with both characters that puts them in an awkward position. It didn't really clarify what was going on, though. It just kind of threw this kind of gimmick, and then just the story kind of went on. The idea is them finding out why this gimmick happened, but I don't know. Again, if I was definitely engaged enough, I'll buy a second issue, but I don't know. Again, if it'll hold me the whole 6 issues. I think it's 6 issues, 7 issues. Sorry.
Who's the creative team? Did you say?
So the creative team is Brandon Thomas, and the artist is Ronan Cliquette. I have never read or seen any of their art before. The art, like, the thing is, the writing's fine. You know, it's clearly meant to be a fun comic, and the writing is not bad. Like, I got that from it, and it sounded like them. You know, it was in the situations they find themselves in. Yeah, like I heard Aquaman and Green Arrow, and the art does a really good job of servicing the characters. It's a bit brutal, I'm not gonna lie, for it being a fun comic. It starts this page with let's just say a cute animal, and I was like, oh, that's really cute, and then you turn the page and it's been shot, and I was like, whoa, okay, easy, tiger. I was like, and then you go, as I say, you go in further in issue, and it's all about this gimmick, which is very much based on like a comedy route, and you're just like, okay. And then like 5 minutes later, like you're reading further, and the same thing that happened earlier happens again. You're like, Jesus, I don't know how to feel about this. You know, I'm feeling a roller coaster of emotions right now. How do you want me to read this? You know, so it was good fun. I'll pick up the second issue. I'll see how I feel about it. But yeah, it was an alright issue. You know, so the next one, I'll go back to Marvel as my other pick, and that is Moon Knight issue 4.
That, not to interrupt you, that was the one of the covers that I had a hard time picking between for my favorite cover.
I only had one issue to pick, like cover to pick from. What did the other one look like?
Oh, sorry. I mean, like between what my actual choice was and that cover, I had a hard time deciding.
Oh,
them.
I'm with you now.
I really like that cover.
Yeah, to be honest, see, so far the Moon Knight covers have been phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. They've been so on point.
I saw a few of the older issues. It might have been 2 or 3 on like the previous month's wall, and I was like, "Damn, this cover looks really good too." Like, what the hell?
That series is selling really well for Marvel too. Like, not just issue number 1, which I know because I've had to research these things in the past, Not just issue 1 sold really well, but like issue 2 and 3 I think went to second printings as well. So that series is really popular right now. And I don't even think it's due to like, I know there's an upcoming Disney Plus series, but that's not really getting a lot of hype in the mainstream as far as like people know it's coming, but it's not like they're like putting out, promotional material already for it because it's like a year away. So I think I think it's just the artwork and the covers and I don't know, but
I think
series is doing really well.
I think that part of it also is this kind of like cult following that Moon Knight has.
Yeah.
I think it's grown a little bit, not like crazy, but I definitely think Moon Knight has a cult following, and I think that's helping to drive sales. I know that I haven't gotten any yet, but I think I'm just going to probably buy them digitally just for the sake of still supporting the title despite being 4 issues behind. But yeah, no, I think that following and the art, like that combination, is absolutely helping the series do as well as it is.
Who's the writer on that book, Connor?
Jed Mackay.
Okay.
Yeah, the thing is, it's funny because I got it's sold out of the standard cover, the first issue. So I got the variant of the first issue, and I saw a bunch of the variants, and I actually wasn't very impressed by them. But from issue 2 onwards, all the covers have been absolutely like fire. Even the variants. So yeah, it's interesting, discussing the covers. I do think they really stand out. And I mean, when I was looking at the pile earlier, although I was already going to be picking up, it is one of the covers that really does stand out. All of them. They all have different styles as well. It's really weird.
So how's the story been so far?
I think it's been okay. I think by all means, the first issue is a brilliant first issue. I wouldn't even say it's a recap issue. It really just does a good job of going through his history. So if you've never read him before, that's the perfect jumping on point because it frames it like he's speaking to like a counselor, and he's telling her all of his like what's went on in the past. So it kind of reads organically as well. I actually gave them major props because it came across, it did a really good job of kind of setting the scene. Since then, it's been okay. It's not really what I've been was looking for from Moon Knight. There's like, it's weird because it doesn't feel like it's building to any big plot points. It feels like it's building to little ones. Like, it set up something in issue 1 that's culminated in issue 3, and it set something up in issue 2 that's culminated in 4. It doesn't feel like it feels like it's taking small steps, which is fine. But again, it's this thing where Moon Knight is this character that he's had a lot of growth in recent times. Like, a lot of writers have taken him and kind of run with it. And I think with this one, they're not really running with it yet. It feels like they're retreading previous things. It's kind of almost Spider-Man-y syndrome, but it's not as large in regards to gimmicks. I just feel like, it's like Moon Knight is sad, Moon Knight is depressed, and I'm like, okay, I know this. He's always like this. Like, what's new? What are we gonna get to? He does have some interesting dynamics with his background characters, and there is some definite. The thing I'll give it, right, is it makes him look like a force. Like, the issue 2 to 4, they have this thing where they introduce a kind of problem, and you think, okay, how does he overcome this? And it treats him with the utmost respect, and that they're, even if you think, oh, is he gonna? He's always like pretty confident, and he kind of deals with situations really well, and that's kind of refreshing. That sort of confidence in character. It's a roundabout that's a bit like, okay, let's move on, because it's him being sad or him going through stuff he's been through before, essentially. But I think as a series, it's the best jumping on point for anyone that wanted to read Moon Knight. And I think it's interesting you're saying like it's selling well, because it's the sort of character I find that probably would sell well for me, because like he's kind of edgy, he's got that sort of violent streak. He's got that, like, as weird as the costume, some people may think the costume looks, it's just for some reason people love it. I love it. I think it's cool. And it's just this character that stands out. It's kind of like Punisher. Like, personally, I'm not a big fan of Punisher, but he's so loved. And he has that like kind of edge to him that I think a lot of people look for in their comics. And I think like that may be what's happening with Moon Knight right now. Maybe it's just a mixture of things tied in with the Marvel show as well. No, like I know I agree with you. It's not like in the mainstream, like really well known, but the fact it's just out there and tied in with the type of character he is, tied in with this cult following. I think it's maybe just that time where Moon Knight's just hit that lucky point and everyone seems to want to be into him or are into him, you know. But I definitely think I think it's worth a read. I don't know how much longer I'll stick with it though, because I'm not, you know, getting what I'm wanting out of it. But that's just me personally. I think it's a good enough read. People could easily jump on and enjoy it. Yeah.
I do think that that's one of like Moon Knight's bigger problems is like they don't really ever put like a superstar writer on him. I don't know if it's just because they don't expect the book to sell well or if they're kind of testing the waters with like other people. I mean, I know they had Jeff Lemire on it at one point. But like outside of that, I feel like he was the biggest name in the last like decade of Moon Knight books.
Yeah, I think Warren Ellis had a run on it too. Around
oh yeah, I read that one or the first trade of it or whatever. But even then, like Moon Knight had like a string of either like 6 to 12 issue series, but like nothing ever really comes of it. And then there's like a gap, and then there would be a new series.
Moon Knight, I mean, dating back to early Moon Knight, he has like this history of having like this hot artist or writer jumping on the book just before they take off. So like Bill Sienkiewicz was on the early Moon Knight books right before Bill Sienkiewicz became the superstar artist that he is. And then Stephen Platt in the 90s. I don't know if you guys even know who Stephen Platt was, but he was like Rob Liefeld studio kind of guy. And he did like 4 issues of Moon Knight and he exploded. Like Wizard Magazine could not get enough of Stephen Platt. And all he did was like 4 issues of Moon Knight. And then he went and did Prophet for Extreme Studios for Liefeld. And he was like, it was like this weird thing. It's like for 1 year, Stephen Platt was the biggest artist in comics. But then he kind of, you know, faded out a little bit. And now I think he's doing like TV stuff. But so they did that. And then Jeff Lemire, when he was on the book, he wasn't the superstar name he is now either. Like he was a big name. People knew who he was, but he wasn't like, now it's like anytime Jeff Lemire puts out a new comic book, people are buying it based on his name.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Like
I don't think it's quite there yet.
People knew him and like he was respected at the time, but like you said, people weren't buying books because his name was on it yet.
So it's weird that Moon Knight kind of carries that history of having these creative teams on him just before they take off. It's a weird thing. So maybe the creative team here, maybe Jed McKay. I guess he's been around for a while though. You said Jed McKay, right?
Yeah.
Maybe this will be his moment. I don't know.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because it's one of the Moon Knight is like a character that has the opposite problem to how I feel Marvel treats other characters. Like my bigger problem with Marvel is that I feel like nothing ever matters. Like it consistently just stuff just happens, events happen, and you can jump on at any point and you just read it and it would relatively make sense, which is fair because it's kind of accessible. But the problem is it just like it doesn't, longtime readers, it doesn't reward them in any way, and that's who you should be targeting, you know. As well as I'm not saying don't make it accessible, but make sure you respect what comes before, you know, and build on that. And Moon Knight is a character that consistently does that, and when you read him from, you know, his original appearance all the way up, and you look at like you got Brian Michael Bendis, Warren Ellis, Jeff Lemire, you know, in recent years. Like everyone always takes him and they add something to him. They add like a little piece to him. They take what came before and then they add their piece and then they pass him along and they move off. You know, like you're saying, well, like he does like these 12 issue runs or whatever. Warren Ellis's run was only 6 issues, introduced the Mr. Knight persona. Like every writer takes him and it's like, okay, I'm going to give him a mental health disorder. And then next one, okay, I'm going to give him a, like, let's have these identities fight each other. You know, and then like let's change his costume because his costume needs a little bit of an update, or you know, and they consistently does that. And when you read it over time, you really see him update and kind of grow with the times as well. And I think that's why he's a character that stood the test of time and surprisingly is really well written for such a, you know, I guess I can't say underappreciated because he's really appreciated, but under the radar character.
Yeah,
you know?
I definitely think that most people don't know who he is. Like some of my old coworkers, like they're kind of like into like the MCU stuff and whatever. And when I was like, oh, hey, do you know about like this Moon Knight series coming out? They look at me and they're like, who the fuck is Moon Knight? I'm like, oh, all right, well, never mind.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is with that, like, you know, again, this new series I think is a brilliant for like newbies to jump on. But I guess it's that what I've just said. It's like waiting to see what they're going to add to him before inevitably moving on, because that seems to be the fun thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting and probably a larger conversation. But like the thing about Marvel and DC's always been, they would say like whenever a creative team gets on a book, their responsibility is to write their story, but make sure they return the toys back to the toy box. They say, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. So basically, bring everything back to where it was before they send it to another creative team, so that nothing's messed up for them. And I hate that for the exact reason you're talking about, because I feel like it means there's like no stakes whatsoever in these books, because it's like, well, no matter what happens, it's going to be returned back to normal. So I wish there'd be more like what you're describing with Moon Knight, where it's like, no, let's alter something forever for this character and then send it to the next writer and have them work within that challenge or that problem and then add their own pieces to the puzzle. Because then, like you said, it rewards you for reading multiple runs. So I wish it would be more like that than they return the toys back to the toy box theory that they've always talked about.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with that. I would say I would agree with that. The thing is I think, again, this could be a topic for another video, but like, I think DC and Marvel kind of get like mentioned the same points for some of these things. Like they always get mentioned of too many events, and, you know, like as you're saying, like nothing matters. But as someone that never used to like DC, like when I was younger, I used to just, DC. I'm a big DC fan now, and I've read a lot of their stuff in the past, like 2 years. And I genuinely think that sometimes they can be bad for it. I don't think they're anywhere near as bad as Marvel for it. I think Marvel are really atrocious for not rewarding longtime readers. I think DC have gotten way better at it. And I think if you kind of look through the history of DC, okay, they do retcons, they do like Flashpoint and stuff, but along the way, they find ways of fixing it, and still then, like, these events reward long-time reading. Like I recently described Death Metal. Death Metal is a season finale to DC's universe. You will not like it unless you've read as much DC as possible from like Crisis on Infinite Earths onwards. You know, that's a lot to ask, and that's maybe too far the other way. But whereas like Marvel, you know, like in the last few years, you know, War of the Realms, King in Black, you know, like going back further, Monsters Unleashed, all these things just happen and they don't matter. You know, like, I mean, King in Black still to be seen because obviously it's building off in Al Ewing's new run. But I just find that things just happen and you don't overly need them. You know? But yeah, so on that note, I'll quick fire the last two reviews because I've books because I've spoken a lot. So one of the covers that stood out to me this week, Aquaman the Becoming. This follows Aqualad. It was a really good issue. Really surprised me. It follows Jackson Hyde, who's basically taking, it's kind of like a Superboy situation. He's taking over as Aquaman a wee bit while Aquaman does other things. It's written by Brandon Thomas, and I don't want to butcher this, but it's drawn by Diego Olortegu. The art is magnificent. It really stood out to me. It conveyed a lot of action. The book is bang for your buck as well. Like it has a ton of going on with it. It's basically just like a day in his life, and has like cameo from Teen Titans. There's some cool characters he fights. He takes on a ridiculous villain, introduces some interesting subplots. And obviously it's got the Pride banner on it, which is cool to see. It's really, really cool to see like a character showing some respect and actually have a good series. Like what with him and Superman right now with John Kent, it's fantastic, like what they're doing. But yeah, this issue was magnificent, and I look forward to reading the second issue. It surprised me. It's the biggest surprise I have this week. Next one, Deathstroke Inc. That's really awesome, but it's written by Joshua Williamson, so that book you kind of expect it because Joshua Williamson is the biggest writer that's steering DC right now. A lot of people have jumped off with this whole Substack situation, but Joshua Williamson seems to be sticking around, and he I don't know how he does it, but he's writing like 5 different titles right now, and they're all key to where DC's going next. Like their next event or whatever they're building towards, he's the one that seems to be steering it.
He's on Batman, right? He's on one of the Batman titles. What do you know which one it is? I tried looking it up and I couldn't figure it out.
He's about to be on the main Batman title once James Tynion leaves.
I thought so, but I wasn't sure if Tynion had left yet.
Because that's the thing, because he's writing Deathstroke Inc., which it's kind of starting to feel like it has something to say about the bigger, wider universe. He's writing Robin. He wrote Infinite Frontier, which was fantastic. He's writing the new Justice League Incarnate series, and he's writing Batman. So he's writing like quite a lot, and all of it is good. I don't know how he's doing it, but he's really balancing all these issues out really well. The only thing with this thing is, I don't know why it's called Deathstroke Inc. yet. Don't know if there's a reason to it, but I'm still struggling to figure that out. The art, Howard Porter, is magnificent. Threw me for a loop though, because all the ads in the book are at the back. And the reason why is because a lot of the pages are like double spreads with like a row of panels along the bottom. So obviously you can't break that up with adverts. Yeah. So they've clearly pushed them all to the back so that the comic can read, right? But it was just really odd because I counted it and it's 22 pages, which is a standard comic. So I got what I was expecting. But when you reach the back, there's like still a thick wad. And I was like, wait, is there a backup? And it's just all adverts. But then I realized it's because of the way the art was formatted. It really needed the space. You couldn't just break up the art. But that's fantastic.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, like, that's kind of interesting that's what they ended up doing with the ads, because I've never seen or like heard of any book doing that with all those, double page spreads or, the way it's framed out and then just kind of like shoving the ads in the back.
Yeah, absolutely. It blew my mind, to be honest. And as much of a culture shock as it was, because I was really confused, in the end, I kind of sat and thought about it and I was like, I'd rather they do that. I'd rather they just put them all at the back. And then just one continuous story, because it read really well. And that's what I mean. I was like, it read so quickly that I was almost like, wait, what? That's it? And then, but there's still so many pages. But it's because I just got it all at once rather than being broken up. But that would have been my top pick of the week. But my final pickup was Batman: The Long Halloween Special. I know you picked up as well, Taylor, I think. Yeah. It was magnificent. Absolutely magnificent. There is nothing could have beat this week. Hands down. It's probably one of the best issues I've read this year. I'll try not to say everything about it because I know Taylor will want to speak about it, but the art and the writing and how it...
Oh, let's go ahead and talk about it together. That's fine.
Do you want to talk about it together?
Actually, I have a question before you guys get into it. Maybe you'll answer it anyway. I know that one of my comic reading sins is having not read the original Long Halloween. My question... you already knew that. My question, though, is how, like, or in what way does this tie into Long Halloween that it's being titled as like a special or whatever?
It takes place. So the Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale Batman comics, which The Long Halloween is one of my all-time favorite comic books. Like, ask me on a given day and I'll say either Watchmen or The Long Halloween. It's 1A to 1B kind of thing. So in they had like a trilogy. If you throw in Catwoman, When in Rome, it's a quadrilogy, I guess. But really a trilogy. It was like they did some one-shot kind of things or minis that were then accumulated into the Haunted Night. And those aren't really necessary. I mean, they're fun reads, but they're not necessary. If you want just like the meat of the story, you don't need to read those. Start with Long Halloween. And that tells the story of like, that takes place directly after Batman Year One. So Batman Year One was by Frank Miller and Dave Mazzucchelli. And then Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale had the idea of like, well, let's continue on that. Long Halloween takes place directly after that. So, and not that you need to read Year One. It's just basically Batman's origin story, which you know. So Long Halloween was like, it was 12 issues, right, Connor?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. It's 12 issue series. it tells the story of the holiday killer. So every holiday throughout the year, this guy's committing murders throughout the city, and the whole thing is Batman trying to solve the mystery of who that is. And there's all these crime families involved and stuff like that. The Dark Knight trilogy borrowed heavily from a lot of the things that happen in there. And then after that, they did Batman Dark Victory, which tells the story of Dick Grayson coming into his life and becoming Robin. So Batman: The Long Halloween takes place when it's just Batman by himself, and then Dark Victory takes place when Robin's introduced. So this Batman: The Long Halloween special takes place after Dark Victory, I believe, or maybe.
No, I agree.
No. I guess in between, or I don't know. Maybe while Dark Victory is happening. How would you?
I took it as well. I can't. It's been a while since I read it, but I took it as it takes place after Dark Victory.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to remember because it's been a long time since I've read Dark Victory. I'll just say Robin's in this book, but yeah. I don't. But he's not quite on the scene with Batman yet. Like he's not quite going night to night with Batman fighting crime. And I can't remember if Dark Victory ends with him becoming Robin or if he's been fighting.
I think he becomes Robin. I think he becomes Robin if I remember rightly, because I remember being deeply surprised at how little Robin was in the book. Like Dick Grayson was introduced.
Yeah, I think
because that's the thing. Because the way that without spoilers, like Two-Face angle in this book, the way it goes, it would conflict with Dark Victory if it was set in that time, I think. So that's why it was Two-Face is the reason I thought it was set after Dark Victory.
You're right. Yeah. So Dan, to answer your question, I think you wouldn't enjoy this if you haven't read those before. So it would be necessary to read those. But yeah, I think it takes place after Dark Victory. I think we're coming to the conclusion of. And Dan, those are, I think those were 90s books. So they're in your wheelhouse, right? You can read 90s comics.
Yes, I've read a few.
It's an ongoing inside joke that Dan doesn't read things prior to the Clinton administration. So,
which is largely true to this point. Until I read Watchmen, I don't think I've read anything older than when Clinton was president.
Which you need to. But I will say, of the two of my favorites, Long Halloween is way more accessible, I think, than Watchmen. Anybody can pick up that comic book and enjoy it, even if you've never read a comic book before. People, I hate when people say, like, what's a good gateway comic for a new comic reader? And people suggest Watchmen. It drives me up a wall. It's like, that's like one of the worst choices for someone to read for the first comic. But Long Halloween very much could be someone's first comic, and it's such a fast read because a lot of the stories being told in the artwork, there's not a lot of heavy dialogue in there. But Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale are such a magic team. Like there's been misses when Jeff Loeb's separate from Tim Sale. There's been misses when Tim Sale's separate from Jeff Loeb. But together, I don't know if they had a single miss. I think they've all been hits. They've done, like I said, those Batman stories we talked about. They did the Catwoman When in Rome miniseries. And then they did a bunch of stuff at Marvel with the heroes like Spider-Man Blue, Hulk Gray, Captain America White, and Daredevil Yellow. I think I nailed all those.
Yeah, you did.
And those are all fantastic as well. But just together, they make magic. And this was, so with that said, and I know Connor said he loved it too, but like with my expectations being so high, because I was like, Long Halloween's a perfect comic book. What more do you need to tell in that story? Well, Dark Victory was really good too. That's up there in my top 25 probably. What more do you need to tell of that story, kind of thing? Well, they told the story here, and I loved it. And it's very much centers around, for those that you have read Long Halloween and maybe haven't picked this up yet, Calendar Man plays a big portion in this. And Calendar Man, who's like a D or E or F level Batman villain, he plays like the like in Silence of the Lambs with Hannibal Lecter, when he what's her name, Clarice, when she's visiting him in jail and she's like trying to get like information from him about the perspective of a killer, I guess. That's kind of the role Calendar Man plays in Long Halloween. Like Batman's visiting him while he's in prison because he's been jailed, and asking him, like, trying to get a read on the holiday killer, because Calendar Man, his thing is that all his crimes are based on the calendar. Well, his holiday killer is killing people on holidays, so it's kind of like a similar thing. So that's kind of the role he plays. Well, in this one, he plays a bigger role, and you actually see him out of prison, and it's really spectacular.
I was so there for it. Like,
yeah.
If anything, like, it's just funny because I would also say two of my favorite comics of all time, Watchmen and Long Halloween. I maybe throw a Mega Man in there. I always love that book with written by Tom King.
That's why we get along, Connor. That's why we get along.
But yeah, and the thing is I think Long Halloween is an absolute classic. It is a must read. And like Taylor, when they announced this, I was like, what the hell else do they have to say? But always the one thing that I wouldn't say disappointed me, but with Long Halloween is Calendar Man. Like, he's so good in it, but he's in such a small role and so impactful. And it always felt like something was missing with him. Like, I was like, I would like something meatier. And this book is what it is. Like, this book is the missing piece. Like, it just fit that nice wee gap of what I felt was missing. And it just was so satisfying. So satisfying, you know? And as you say, Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale, they just absolute fireworks when they work together.
And this one shot, it's a little bit, I don't know how many pages it is, 60 or 80, but it's got like a spine to it. It's perfect bound. So it's a thicker issue too. Because
I saw that. I was surprised. I saw it on the rack, and I purposely avoided it because I hadn't read Long Halloween, obviously. But I was very surprised to see that it's one of those like thicker, like it's almost like a mini size trade, really.
Mm-hmm.
But it was fantastic. Like, to tell a satisfying story, and it leaves you wanting more. Like, now I want these guys to get back to do another Batman run.
And that's unheard of nowadays. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like teams coming back, going, like, again, when it was announced, I thought, oh, I hope it's not forced, and I hope they're not just doing this for the sake of it. And like, by the end of it, you are like, holy crap. Just because the thing is, with these specials nowadays, again, I'm experienced with it because of Spider-Man. Marvel like to give oversized specials to every random Spider-Man issue and make you pay like $10 and stuff. And you're just like, I don't want to spend that money on this. Just give me the $2 story in it. I don't need all the backups. And like, when you nowadays with the big two, when you read these bigger issues, sometimes I find them a slog. Like, they're not designed to be that long. So again, with this, I kind of was waiting for that. But it was a bigger book, and by the end of it, I was like, God damn it, why couldn't it have been bigger? This is so exciting.
Exactly. And so they just recently came out with the Batman Long Halloween Deluxe Edition hardcover, which is like the only format that book hasn't been released in so far. And I was angry. It's like, why didn't they put this in there? Like push that back like a few months or something, or like next summer. And put this in there and make that the selling point. Like, this is the first time Long Halloween's been collected with this thing. So I'm hoping they re-release the Absolute Edition, because I don't own that. And I would love for them to re-release the Absolute Edition with this in there. That would be like a day one buy. Like, I want to rip through Long Halloween and read it again. And I was so ecstatic with this issue. Like, I want to, and I've read that comic already dozens of times, but like, I want to go back and read it and see like what pieces did I miss that they put into here. And Two-Face plays a big role in this, and he's he's my number one Batman villain ever, and probably one of my favorite comic book villains.
That's a controversial take.
Is it?
I mean,
it's the same for me. Like, he's one of my favorites.
Isn't everybody's answer supposed to be Joker if you ask like the everyman?
No.
Well, yeah, fair enough. But I think there's so many layers to the Two-Face and Harvey Dent character, that there's so many amazing stories that can be told with like how he was a good guy, he was against crime, he flipped and like turned into this monster, and did crime drive, like, was a crime so bad in Gotham that it led him to that, it led him to the brink of insanity. Like, I love it. And Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale tell an amazing story of Two-Face throughout the Long Halloween. They expand upon it more in this. And one of my other issues I picked up this week has some Two-Face action in it as well. But there's some, like, in Joker, he's a fantastic villain, sure. But I just feel like there's so many depths and layers to Two-Face. And my favorite Spider-Man villain's always been Green Goblin for very similar reasons, as far as like the dual identities and like, is he a good guy, bad guy? He's been a good guy, he's been a bad guy kind of thing. Like, but Two-Face, I think, is a fantastic villain, and that might play into why I love these stories so much. But
the thing is, I agree, because see, Two-Face, I always thought he was the perfect metaphor for Batman, because like Nightfall, I like Nightfall. I've read all of Nightfall. I quite enjoy that. And Azrael's meant to be this character that is like, what if Bruce wasn't Bruce? Like, how easily would he be corrupted if a random person kind of got involved and tried to be Batman? Harvey Dent is a better metaphor for that, because they both try and take on Gotham, and one handles it and one can't handle the insanity, almost like it's almost too much. And not only that, then they clash with each other and fall. Because the thing is, one of the coolest things about Two-Face for me is always the friendship. Like, does Batman still care? Does he just do the cold shoulder? Does he act like he doesn't care? You know, like there's so many layers to Two-Face. It's magnificent.
And they play on that here too, because one of the big relationships which you'll see in the Dark Knight movie, that they did so well that they kind of borrowed from these stories, was the friendship triangle between Jim Gordon, Batman, and Two-Face, or Harvey Dent. And they touch on that in this too. And that friendship was always, those kind of dynamics between those three was always very fascinating to me as well. And you're exactly right. Like, Batman, the story that's always been told about him and outside of the page, and the story that people have told with like, well, I'm going to tell a Batman story, but he's going to kill people. And like with my own superhero that I create or whatever, like these vigilantes that indie creators will use. It's always like, if Batman is he one bad day away from going ballistic? Like, can Gotham trust him 100%, the Gotham police? Because what if something bad happens to him where he just goes nuts, and we've been trusting him all this time, and now it's our problem because we kind of allowed this to happen, kind of thing. So yeah, Harvey Dent kind of plays that role. Like, he was the guy that was in the role that could stop him, and then he got driven to insanity by all these corrupt criminals. I don't know. I think he's a fascinating character, and that's one of the best comics that tells that story.
Yeah. The last thing I'll add to this one as well is that I'm also a huge fan of Haunted Knight and Dark Victory. I like seeing that as a trilogy. Like, Haunted Knight is a very small and quick read, but I like the kind of early days Bruce and kind of just the Halloween feel of it. And then the Long Halloween is just this meaty, layered mental battle between all these players in Gotham. It's a style that I wish kind of Batman would go back to. There's all these gangster families and all that. And then Dark Victory introduces Robin, and it's a really organic way of why Robin would be there. And it continues all the themes from Long Halloween. And then I feel like this special fits so well because it does feel like a continuation of not just Long Halloween, but Dark Victory with Robin. And I feel like it just fits nicely. It wasn't forced in slightly. It's just, saying that, I recommend reading all three, or even if you push, just read Long Halloween and Dark Victory before you read the special. But it's 100% worth it.
Yeah, and my favorite Batman stories are when he's doing detective work, when there's a mystery involved. And I would argue there hasn't been a better take on that version of Batman than the Long Halloween. And so I never really cared for Batman being a part of the Justice League and those kinds of things. Like, I think people have told that story well, and they've found ways to make that interesting. But that's always like super like above street level, superhero kind of thing that I feel like Batman's better told street level, solving crimes, be doing detective work kind of thing. So
I agree. I think that's my biggest gripe with Batman is that most of the time, or not most of the time, but he's not often seen doing detective work. He's like with the Justice League, and like realistic, like I don't really care what any like Batman fanboy would have to tell me. Like, he's out of his league when he's with the Justice League. There's no way that, like, I understand he's prep time and gadgets and this and that, but like after a while, it's just like, come on, like there's no reason that he's out there like squaring up with Darkseid alongside Superman and Wonder Woman. Like, it's just not, like, he's a regular guy.
And that's the endearing quality about him. So the endearing thing about him is like, I could be Batman if I had enough money. Like, obviously that's silly, but like, that's kind of what you feel in these stories. So if you, like, exactly what you're saying, Dan, like if you remove that and put him up there with these superheroes, it's kind of like, well, the one thing that was most endearing about the character, he kind of ripped away.
I really think that he's just thrown in there because of his popularity. Like, he was one of the biggest names alongside Superman for however many decades. So they were just like, you know what? Let's make these two guys like quasi best friends, and they're gonna, form the Justice League and whatnot. I don't know the literal history of it, but like, you know what I'm saying. I think it was just because like, oh shit, Batman and Superman are super popular. Let's make a team with them and some other people.
See, I've in the last year, I've went on a big deep dive of Batman because I've never been a fan of him. Or I used to always say I'm not a fan of Batman. I don't really like the character and stuff. But in recently doing a deep dive into it, I've grown to really love the guy. Because I think, see that whole like prep time thing, these jokes have kind of ruined him almost, I think. Not like ruined the character, but just like it puts people off.
Yes.
And I think that's
obviously when people use excuses like that, I think.
Yeah, and I think that disservices the character. Like Batman it's not about prep time. It's about like the mental capacity of Batman, how he does throw himself into these things with Darkseid, rather than like going on about prep time, go on about how brave he is, because he's a brave guy. And one of the biggest things that I really love about Batman is the Bat family. You know, consistently nowadays, people always say, oh, another Bat title, another Bat title. But the thing is again, having read it a lot recently, you kind of realize that Batman's built this family because he never had a family as a kid. And he wants these kids to be better than he ever was. Like, that's why Nightwing won't be Batman. Because he doesn't want him to be Batman. Batman is what he had to be to come out of, to save Gotham, but also to come out of what happened to him as a child. Whereas Nightwing is what is Dick Grayson's personality. It's what he's found. And Batman doesn't want any of these guys. And the reason Tim Drake would be Batman is because he's the only one that doesn't look at it in the way that, you know, the rest of them would. Tim Drake actually has a positive attitude towards Batman and could better it. He's the only one that could become Batman and be better than Bruce because he has a different attitude to the rest of them. But it's this family thing. It's actually Fast and Furious-esque. It's very like family orientated. And you look at this because Batman isn't the character you would ever think would be family orientated because he's a solo guy. But he's not, and that translates to Justice League as well. He's this guy that's just trying to make everyone better and not have to live what he's lived through. And it's fantastic.
So yeah. You're selling me on this, Connor. You're doing a good job. You should be the pitch man for DC. Are a lot of those themes that you're discussing, are those touched upon in the Detective Comics run with James Tynion that he just recently finished last year or so?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's themes that are definitely hit upon right now. DC are kind of doubling down on it. And it definitely started with that Tynion run. That Tynion run on Detective Comics is unbelievably good. And yeah, there's a lot of this sort of discussion, you know, but the thing is it's not just that, like the outside titles are doing it right now and they're doubling down on it, you know. Like even Harley Quinn, I don't know if you know where Harley Quinn's at, but she's basically part of the Bat family. She's like his sidekick now that he's brought under his wing to try and teach her. And like there's this scene, right? It's fantastic where Batman and this other hero, I won't say, they go Gotham, save the day, cool. And then Harley like comes in like 5 minutes after, runs after them, and they're already taking off in the Batmobile and stuff, and she's out of breath. And she's like, Jesus Christ, how do you get here so quick and stuff? But he appreciates that she's trying to get there. And that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to get her to be better. And as much as James Tynion's run on the Batman title has been a bit like, you know, it's not been as gauging as other work. There's some really there's some good golden nuggets in there, especially to do with Harley, where she's facing things that she's never had to before mentally. And he's basically, you can see him already trying to develop her like he's done Nightwing, or like he's done Barbara as Batgirl, or, you know, Kate as Batwoman. He's building all these people up, and it is essentially like an army, but it's also him just trying to give them better lives than what he had, you know?
That's a run I've been wanting to read. Like the omnibus came out and stuff, and I wanted to read that because I heard so many good things about that. And I do love a lot of those Bat family characters. Like Dick Grayson's one of my favorite heroes. Tim Drake was great. Like I love a lot of those characters. So, but I'm not so in touch with modern runs of the big two in general. Like most of the big two stuff I've read has been like Bronze Silver Age kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Like those are just my sensibilities, I guess, the things that appeal to me. So I have been wanting to read more of these modern runs, and that one appealed to me because I love team up books, and I love the Bat family, and I've heard so many good things about it. So I think it kind of sold me on. I think I need to start it now. So
yeah, Yeah, well, the thing is that run is basically the foundation for where Batman, the entire Bat family, is now. Even if, although Tinian's jumping off it, it will be. You can already tell it is it's going to be what it's built upon for the next few years. And like even Damian, Damian in the comics is going through this really tragic storyline right now, and he's cut off from the Bat family. But that adds more to it because it's all to do with the Bat family, why he's separated. And it's how does Batman feel about this? How does Damian feel about this? And that's also written by Joshua Williamson. So you can tell that what they're doing with Damian as Robin is a whole big thing there. And I'm there for it. I'm so excited for it, And it's what I'm looking for in comics. Like Robin right now, the Robin title with Damian is a deep dive into his mental health and where he's at, because he's a very overconfident character, and Batman's not there to help him do what he's done with everyone else and go like, okay, Luke, where are you at? Damien's scared of seeing him, and there's just so many layers to it, and it's fantastic, and all these characters are going through this right now, so it's brilliant. Yeah.
No, I think we need to clip this last few minutes of Connor ranting about this. I think it's great stuff. It's got me pumped up. I want to go read some Batman comics, so we need to clip that and then send that onto the social medias. Connor, did you have any other? Was that your last comic you want to talk about that you picked up?
That was my last comic. Sorry, and that was my pick of the week. 100%. Nothing beats it.
Okay, wait. I know we've gone a lot longer than we expected, but I think it's great. All great conversation. Paperback Dan, let's see what you picked up this week.
So, last week I touched on how my pull list is fairly small, and I actually walked into my shop today and there was nothing there for me this week that I was already pulling. I've never experienced that before, so that was weird, but I still got stuff. So, Connor, I was jealous of your Dark Ages cover last week, so I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with the variant one. Maybe we'll give it away for the next subscriber that we get or something. So yeah, I bought that. And then Taylor, your boy, Frank, was it Goggle? How do you say it? Google? He has that Unborn series. So issue 2 came out today from Source Point Press. I know there's some controversy with the guy, but
I wanted to you said he's my boy, but that's all pending the investigation that's happening.
Yeah, so. Maybe not right now. So I bought issue 2 because I can't find it digitally. It's not on Comixology, even though the publisher has other books on there. I thought that was kind of weird. So I looked through some of the back issues on the previous month's wall, and one was also there. So I bought both. I waited to find the first one before I committed to getting the second one. And I don't really know what to expect from it. Apparently the whole pitch is essentially, if you're a fan of Alien and Power Rangers, then this is for you. Connor, I see your eyes just wide. It's like, wait, did you say Power Rangers? No, now's not the time we're going to have our Power Rangers discussion. But I like Power Rangers, and I mean, I never watched one of the Alien movies or anything like that, but I mean, I think the concept sounds cool. Based on, this isn't a spoiler because it's just a prediction, but based on the cover, this one has 5 people on it, and this one only has 2, so I get the feeling that everyone's just going to fucking die. I'm pretty sure it's a 5-issue mini. I'll have to double check that, but yeah.
I mean, Power Rangers was a franchise that was very big for me as a child, and I love the Kyle Higgins run on Power Rangers. And then Alien is one of my favorite film franchises. So, and I haven't even read this yet, so I'm kind of hooked about this idea. But it's interesting that Kyle Higgins has made a career now of writing Power Rangers type comics. I made the joke before he was announced to be the Darkhawk writer. I was like, oh well, Kyle Higgins, surely he's going to write a Darkhawk comic book for Marvel, right? There's not a more apparent character for him, and of course he's writing Darkhawk, and then he's wrote.
I didn't know that. That's news to me.
Yeah, and then he's written Ultraman for Marvel, and then he's written Radiant Black, his own creator-owned series, which I was glad for. I was like, finally, Kyle Higgins, who's basically rebuilt Power Rangers in comics. He's made Power Ranger comic books like great again. And then he did like the Ultraman thing. He's doing Dark Rock. So I was glad to finally see him do that same thing, but now it's creator owned, where he owns it 100% because he doesn't own that Power Ranger stuff, like all the great stuff that he did with that. Right. But now it seems like Frank Gogol, who he created a Power Rangers character for the current run, which Connor could tell us who the writer is for that. Ryan Parrott, is that?
Yeah. So he wrote an issue of the Phantom Ranger, who is a character from the show. But Ryan Parrott writes both series right now. Frank
Gogol didn't create that character?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, that's news to me. I thought he created him. But yeah, so he wrote that one shot, and he's, if you follow him on Twitter, he's a huge Power Rangers fan, like up to the point where he watches the oh man, what's the Japanese show called? Sentai, right?
Super Sentai. Yeah,
Super Sentai. Yeah, he watches all those too. So it's just funny that Kyle Higgins and Frank Gogol now have the creator own Power Rangers, but also they're in the Power Rangers comic universe. It just seems like there's like an interesting dynamic happening there. But you haven't had the chance to read those then, Dan?
I did not, because I came straight from the comic book store here to talk to you guys.
What do you have next for us?
That was it.
Oh, okay.
It was such a light week. And yeah, I had a bit of a budget, but I went way under because, like I said, there was nothing. I asked the guy, and he's like, yeah, no, there's nothing. I got nothing for you from this week.
It's the last week of the month. I wonder if that's why. I think a lot of the big titles seem to come out week 1 of the month. But so I guess go ahead.
See on that last title. So it's interesting we're talking about Power Rangers and where it's kind of at. Like these creators are kind of going off. Because Frank Gogol is someone that I thought was going to do like a lot of things with Power Rangers, and he kind of disappeared for a bit. But in speaking about like this, it's like the tokusatsu genre, like that's where like the Power Rangers, the Sentai are kind of based in. And it's really funny because when we're talking about Higgins, like Radiant Black and stuff, as good as Higgins stuff was on Power Rangers, Ryan Parrott's has been 100 times better. And it's interesting because I'm reading Radiant Black, and Radiant Black is good, but I believe Radiant Black is it'll eventually go in the direction he wanted to go in with Power Rangers, and he got a lot of resistance with Power Rangers. Now, when I first started reading Higgins' Power Rangers run, he did a lot of things that the show couldn't do because 1, Sentai footage, 2, budget.
Yeah.
And he was very much like happy to do things that were never done before in the show. But reading Shattered Grid and all that, as good as it all was, it almost felt like he was too happy to just change stuff and too happy. Like he was like, oh, just go off on our own thing and just do our own thing and stuff. And that's what we wanted. And you can see that with Radiant Black. Ryan Parrott has done this thing where he's taken the legacy and he makes it so damn interesting. He's added so much mythos to the mythos that was already there. So he really like respects like the fans and not changing things, but still gives us different things that keeps us on our toes, but new people also having no clue what's going to happen. I cannot express how amazing Ryan Parrott's Power Ranger series is right now. And everyone always brings up Higgins' run. And it's so much better than Higgins' run. And that's not me saying Higgins' run's bad. It's amazing. But Gogol was writing stuff that's affecting Parrott's run right now. And it was excellent. So it makes me really want to read that series as well, because that single issue was amazing. Damn.
Wow, that's interesting. You're making me regret selling all my hardcovers. I sold my Power Rangers hardcovers when I moved recently. So,
no, those hardcovers are a mess.
Like the way they're mapped.
Yeah, the deluxe, the ones with like them holding their helmets on the front.
Yeah, they messed it up with the 4th one where they didn't include the Go-Go Power Rangers stuff.
Yeah, that's why I've not got them. They're a complete mess because you can actually read it in an order now. To be honest, the way that the series has been released, the way it is a mess. It's really complicated. I could tell you you can map it so you can read it from beginning to end. It'd be one big storyline, like Go-Go to Power Rangers. You could just read them flat out. That just in my head, like they should have just done a Ninja Turtles and just done it like that. Release Go-Go first, and then Mighty Morphin, or alongside, but advertised it in a certain way. They've because they did that Kickstarter for the deluxes, and I looked at it and it didn't fix the problem. and it just I'm not impressed by the deluxes whatsoever.
This is the first I've heard anybody say that the Ryan Parrott run is not only good but better than Higgins. Like usually people say that that's when the book drops off.
Not 100% not. It is consistently. If there was a Power Ranger issue out this week, it'd be my top pick. I can already tell you that. And although I'm biased because I like Power Rangers, not each week I read a Power Rangers issue is the top pick by far. The way that it develops the characters, the way that it changes things from the show, but also adds to the lore and gets you excited because if you know the show, you know what's about to happen, but you're not sure quite in what way. It's magnificent. And like he did this arc called Necessary Evil, and that arc took place in Go-Go and Mighty Morphin. And that was a goddamn epic. I enjoyed that more than Shattered Grid.
Wow. All right. Well, I'll go over the stuff I picked up this week. So I did have some collected editions that I picked up. I'll just run through real fast. I picked up this Flash by Grant Morrison. Trade paperback. I got this at Ollie's for just a few bucks. Ben from our group let me know that it was mostly standalone. And I don't know. I was thinking back. I don't know if I've ever read a Flash proper title. So this might be a first. I don't think I've ever read like a comic with. I've read comics with Flash in it, but not a proper title. So I don't know if that should be my first or not. But I've been on a big Grant Morrison reading kick this year. So then I also got Jack Kirby's Superpowers. This is just a few bucks too at Ollie's, and I have all this included in the Bronze Age by Kirby omnibus. But this is like a nice little reader copy I can lug around. And this is interesting stuff because it's like 80s Kirby, which is like the last decade Kirby really was doing a lot of pencil work in. So it's a lot of the his latter years. So that'll be interesting. And then from fellow Cupcake Tanner, I bought these off of him. And this is Animal Man by Grant Morrison 1 and 2, which with these two deluxes, they tell the entire run of Grant Morrison's Animal Man. So excited to get those. I've read those digitally earlier this year. That's kicked off my Grant Morrison reading. So excited to get those. But then single issues that I picked up this week. So the aforementioned Batman Long Halloween. Best read of the week for sure. Then I got two books that were in my pull folder from last week that I didn't get a chance to pick up yet, but Monster Kill Squad. This is a Bad Idea comic book, which just look at that cover. That's amazing. So
that
Monster Kill
amazing.
Squad is I think it's a 4-issue series. But the way I would give you an elevator pitch of what it's about is it's like Expendables, like those movies Expendables, fight monsters. So, and then the interiors are great too. I'll just show a little bit of the artwork. Like just ripping dudes' heads off. I mean, I don't know. This cover was one of my favorites, but it didn't actually come out this week, so I couldn't pick it. But that's written by Christos Gage and drawn by Tomas Giorello. I don't know.
Christos Gage.
Christos Gage, yeah, he's the writer.
So he's getting some love.
Yeah, after his
Because
after he was outed as the ghostwriter for Dan Slott, I think, right?
Yeah, he covers Dan Slott so much, like Superior Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, Fantastic Four.
Yeah, this is the first Bad Idea comic that he's the writer of, and Bad Idea, they're a controversial publisher, but I've picked up every single one of their comics that has been easily accessible. I will say some of the more rarer ones that they've had gimmicks on, I didn't pick up, but pretty much every one of the titles I've picked up. And they don't do collected editions, they don't do digital, and they only sell to comic book shops. It's kind of like their gimmick, but they've had a lot of amazing comics through that. The other one's Batman 89. This is one of my favorite series going right now. I freaking love this series. So I was expected to have 3 Batman books today, which is kind of fitting for the joke of like DC releases 50 Batman books a week. But Batman Reptilian, I think, got pushed back till next week. And that's a series I love too. That's Liam Sharp and Garth Ennis. But so this was only the second Batman book. But Batman 89. So this takes place in the movie world after Batman Returns. So you have Batman 89, or it's just called Batman back then, but it's often known as Batman 89. and then Batman Returns, and then this takes place after that, as if the Batman Forever and Batman and Robin never happened. And it's written by Sam Hamm, who was the scriptwriter on both those movies, Batman and Returns. So it's kind of fun that he's back in this world. And then Joe Quiones is the artist. And I love those movies. And when this came out, I knew I had to pick it up because I love those movies. And not only just those movies, but all of the like behind the scenes of those movies. And it's amazing that Sam Hamm has found a way to include a lot of the behind the scenes rumors that led into that never happened or never came to fruition. There's a great I think in the late 90s, after all those movies came out, they did like a 4-pack DVD pack that each one had like a special feature documentary that's like a half-hour long for each movie. They're all on YouTube. I'd recommend watching them if you're interested. But you get a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and there's like rumors like Howard Stern was going to play Scarecrow, or in the first movie you'll see Billy D. Williams plays Lando Calrissian in the Star Wars movies, but he's also Harvey Dent in the first Batman movie that came out in '89, the Tim Burton one. But you never see him become Two-Face. Eventually in that series, you see Tommy Lee Jones play Two-Face, which he did an abysmal job of. And I already talked about how great, or how much I love Two-Face. That Tommy Lee Jones portrayal was utterly just awful. I can't express that enough. But Billy D. Williams has been quoted in interviews saying that he wished he had the opportunity to become Two-Face. You get to see that in this comic. You get to see him become Two-Face. And also there's rumors of like the first Robin in the series, who eventually was played by Chris O'Donnell in Batman Forever. If Tim Burton had done a third movie instead of passing it over to Joel Schumacher, the rumor was that Marlon Wayans was going to play Robin. So you're going to have like a black Harvey Dent and a black Robin throughout this film series. That comes to fruition as well in here. And I don't want to get too many spoilers because there's a whole bunch more of that kind of stuff. But it's amazing that they tell all of those stories, but then they add so many more layers and depth to that mythos that it has me so invested, and I can't wait. And this is the issue you officially see him become Two-Face. They do it so well. I love comics when they do this. I think one of the most powerful storytelling devices comics have is the page turn. It's unlike anything else in any other medium. You give the control of the reader to see that jump scare or that jump, whatever that page turn is going to be. You don't get that in movies. You don't get that in TV. You don't get that in reading a prose novel. Comics is the only medium that you can do that with. So like that page turn is, important. So you get the big reveal, and they build it up so much in this issue. And then when you get the big reveal of what he looks like, which I won't spoil and show you, but it's just amazing. And I love this comic book. I'm on board for it. It is like an Elseworlds tale. So like different characters you'll see taking different paths that they don't take in the normal Batman universe. I hope it's only a 6-issue series. So this is issue number 3. I kind of want to see it keep going. And I know that Batman 66, when they did that series, kind of took on its life of its own, and it eventually did like 30 issues plus a lot of crossovers. I kind of want to see this taken on it. I'd love to see them eventually get to the point where they kind of redo Mr. Freeze and Bane and those kinds of things in the movie universe and tell those stories. I think it'd be great. And then the last issue I have to talk about today is also my cover of the week, Pop Star Assassin. So we talked about this in the chat. This was kind of, it has a cool back cover too. I can't fit it all on camera.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even catch that. Wow.
We talked about this in the chat. It kind of took on a little bit of a life of like Chicken Devil, which is, check it out on our channel. I wasn't a part of it, but these two guys were, along with Lowhit and Hess. They all did a great review over Chicken Devil #1, which I love that issue. But it's kind of like that thing you see, like this ridiculous cover and premise, and then you're just like, what the heck can that be about? Does it deliver? Kind of thing. That's why I picked this up. I told you guys, like, if it was on the racks, I'd pick it up. I did, and it delivered. It was more than I expected it to be. The creative team is all people I've never heard of. So it's the creator writer is Ed Levalee, and then the artist is Marcelo Bazil, co-writer Matt Cashel, editor Tara Cloud Clark. Yeah, I don't know. Here's the creative team if you want to. I guess it's backwards, but
I don't recognize any of those names, and it's funny that you brought that up because I also don't even recognize the publishing company.
Yeah, it's Behemoth. which I've seen their name around. I don't think I've ever read any of the comics, but I've seen their name around because they're like with Volt and Aftershock, like those lower tier publishers that are kind of like on the upswing. But yeah, but I don't think I've ever read a comic from that publisher either. But so this is like drenched in 70s culture, which is funny for me because lately I've been getting really into 70s culture because it's a strange period of time in pop culture, because like the 60s were like the psychedelic 60s, the 80s were like the pop, glitter, glamour, disco ball, nonsense, and sandwiched in between like this weird time of the 70s where it's like coming out of the psychedelic 60s, getting into like the pop era of the 80s. And like Marvel too had a lot of weird titles. I love weird comics. It's one thing you'll learn if you follow this channel and hear me talk. Like, I just love weird comics. Like, the weirder the better, in my opinion. And Marvel was just like 70s era Marvel was just the weirdest. So this is all 70s culture. Obviously, you can see like Elvis is on the cover. You have this buxom blonde with a beauty mark who is like a Marilyn Monroe. I think this guy's supposed to be like a Robert Redford type. And then I don't know who this is good. But the whole point is that there's so many characters in here. It says at the beginning, it has like a fun disclaimer. Any resemblance to actual persons living or dead or actual events are purely coincidental. And it's a product of the author's imagination used in a fictitious manner. So there's a lot of real people involved in here, like Elvis, but you find out real early on this is not actually Elvis. And the reveal of who he is really awesome, which I'm not going to spoil. And then you get like the Marilyn Monroe character who goes by Norma Jean in here, which if people know, that's Marilyn Monroe's actual name, Norma Jean. And there's other types and stuff like that too. So it's playing like in the 70s in its own little world. And it's just like amazing. And it says first explosive issue. I would agree with that sentiment. That's not just like a hyperbolic catchphrase. It was explosive. It's like a crime story. And there's like just like gunfights galore. There's some martial arts involved, and it was a fun first issue, and I'm on board. I don't even know what the series is supposed to be. If it's supposed to be like 12 issues, 6 issues, I don't know. But it got me enough to where I'm definitely going to pick up the next issue. And the thing about it, the thing about it is too,
how long it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to look it up. I didn't have time to look it up today. But all these characters that have showed up, like I love comics that have me doing research, which I know some people are like, that's stupid. But when I read a comic and I'm like, and it has me like invested so much that I want to learn more about it. There's some characters in here that I probably like were obvious 70s pop culture references that I didn't understand that I want to go look up. Like, is that Robert Redford? I'm pretty sure it is, but I don't know. I'm going to look it up though. And also like what these other artists and writers did, because the art is really good. Like it's really, and the colorist too. So like flashback scenes too, where like some of the art, like the colorist, sorry, there's a glare on the page, does like different jobs coloring it. And there's like these club scenes where it has like this really cool purple tint on it.
It's very psychedelic.
Yeah. Like, and there's this mysterious character too that plays a big part, which they haven't revealed like who exactly that is yet. So and that's one thing too, is like it's opening so many threads of like mystery where you're trying to figure out what is going on and like who these people are. But like I said, the big reveal of who this Elvis character is was, I'll just say it's a famous person. It's an actual person. But the big reveal of who it was like, okay, like I'm on board for this comic now. Like that's awesome. So I want more. I don't know. It doesn't even have an issue number on the cover. It says first explosive issue, but it doesn't have like an issue number. So I'm assuming there will be more. Please be more. But I love this idea too, like Chicken Devil. Like it's sold on the cover alone. Like we all bought it almost like a meme, I think Dan called it. Like it was like this ridiculous looking cover, obviously a ridiculous premise. Like, why is this guy in this chicken mascot costume with a gun in his hand? Like, what is this about? I love the idea of buying a comic on that cover and then it becoming something more that you didn't expect. And that's what I got with Popstar Assassin. And that's what I got with Chicken Devil. So yeah, I was on board with it.
That's awesome. You sold me on that because I quite like Chicken Devil, but that cover is amazing. I would have picked up my comic shop had it, but unfortunately they didn't. But I might get it digitally.
Yeah, I love these like old movie poster covers. Like they just look
Yeah,
so cool.
I'm a sucker for that. Like I have a book of like, you know, Bruce Lee posters, you know, for his
Yeah.
like alternate posters that they had for his, and yeah, they look magnificent. You don't get movie posters like that anymore, so that cover's really cool.
Right. Yeah, like the 70s movies. Yeah, like Bruce Lee movies. Like that's like the kind of stuff that it's just so coincidental that that's the stuff I've been getting into this year. It's like 70s culture. And then this comes into my life. And it's like perfect timing. But I think I don't know, I guess we can wrap up this episode as far as what we picked up.
Actually, if we can call an audible on that, there's something that I wanted to talk about that I noticed when I walked into my shop. As I was looking around, the way my shop is set up, I don't know if this is like normal or whatever, but they've got like their new rack, and then like the entire rest of the wall is like the last like 2 or 3 months of back issues. It's not really like a back issue bin because they're also on display. It's just whatever like didn't sell from the month or week before, or whatever. And I was looking and I saw a lot of books from publishers that I had like never heard of, or like just recently found out literally like within the last week, like this Unborn book. I've never heard of Source Point Press. I saw another, I think it was like Battle Cats or something like that from Mad Cave. And then another publisher that I recently found out about, Advent Comics. I just started following them on Twitter because I thought like some of their stuff looked cool. I saw all of these kinds of books on the racks, and I asked my like counter monkey, as they call them. I was like, you're probably used to this because you work here, but what's with all these new publishers? And he's saying that they're actually kind of thriving a little bit right now because of the issues that like DC is having in terms of getting their books out like in a timely fashion, and people are like tired of Marvel, probably and DC, but whatever. And he said that they're doing really well, which obviously for me, like I'm big on the independents. People will come to find that. You guys already know that. Like I'd much rather read an independent book than a big 2 book. And I think that's great for the industry. I think it's honestly, it's very surprising, especially, when you hear things about like a paper shortage or comic sales being down or whatever, when you find all these publishers that you've never heard of all of a sudden, showing up. Like I'm even surprised that like my middle of nowhere comic shop is getting some of these.
Yeah, I think one thing that is misconstrued about the health of the comic book industry is I equate it so much to TV, and I've equated this on people on Twitter, is that like you look at MASH, like the old series MASH on TV, like the series finale for that did like astronomical numbers that will never be replicated by a normal TV show ever again. Like I think like the Super Bowl is beating it, but not a normal TV show. And the reason for that was because back then there's only like 3 channels. The options were so slim. Now the reason why no TV show will beat it is not because TV shows are not good or not as good as MASH or not more popular than MASH, is that there's so many options now. There's like streaming has exploded the number of options that people have for TV shows. And then you add on to that on demand, like people are not watching live TV shows as much either. So those ratings are not going to replicate what MASH did. So when you have like Amazon and Apple TV and Netflix and Hulu and all these other like streaming services, every network's sitting their own streaming service now. Like FX has their own streaming service, Showtime, like it's insane. So the options are so big that like now what's happening is that there are so many different popular shows. Like you'll see like a Squid Games that like really takes over like social media as far as like being like the it show, but otherwise there's going to be like thousands of people watching this show and thousands of watching this show rather than millions watching this one show. And I think that's what's happening with comics, is that like rather than having so many few options when it was just like Marvel, DC, maybe Image, maybe Dark Horse, now there's so many publishers that like people aren't just gravitating towards like, oh, we have to go pick up the X-Men book this week because that's the book to pick up. Now it's like, no, you're gonna have people that are Behemoth publisher fans that are buying only Behemoth books, or you'll still have your DC people, but you're also gonna have like your Bad Idea people that are picking up Bad Idea books, or you'll have your manga fans, or you'll have people that are just like Image diehards, and so those they're all becoming like more niche, I think, as far as like who those fans are. But because of the options are so much, you're not going to see those huge numbers on Marvel DC books ever again. But that's not to say that there's fewer comic book reading fans. There's just fewer fans only buying those titles. So I think that's what's happening. And on top of that, it's never been easier for smaller publishers to get a grasp on the industry and start publishing and printing their own comic books. Before, it had to be, let's call it Marvel and see if they can do an imprint or something that we can publish. Now you can have, through things like the internet and just like being able to communicate to different printing presses and like that kind of thing, you can become a publisher easier now than it ever was before. So I think that's also adding into it.
Yeah, and I think the TV analogy is good for sure, and it also really makes me think that like I think the way they do ratings now, or well, have been doing ratings this whole time, is like a dated metric, because with all the streaming options, I feel like it's really crippling how like the live TV audience. And I mean, I don't care one way or the other. Personally, I don't really watch live TV either. And I think you could probably say the same thing about comics in terms of how like Netflix has made us want to like binge things. For me personally, like I'd much rather read like 2 or 3 trades than pick up a monthly book. Because the trades usually end up being more cost effective. You get a little bit more of a complete story. You don't have to wait, obviously, 30 to 40 days between each issue.
That's something that these people, these detractors, are saying that the industry is dying, the sky is falling. They're not taking into account either. They're only looking at single issue sales, which are down compared to like early 90s speculator boom. But what they're not taking into account is exactly what you're saying. Like they're not taking into account, well, how are collected editions doing? Because those are like record number. So like, it's just like the industry's just pivoting towards their distribution model.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I don't know if they're still making books or if they're like pausing, but like I know that TKO, that was their business model. Like we're just going to release trades. I still have the ones that I bought from you. I haven't read them, but that's beside the point. But yeah, and I thought that was a really good idea. I don't know if those, like I could see the trades right here. And like, I don't know if those are supposed to be complete stories or if it's like it can be, but there could be a volume 2 down the line also kind of thing. I don't know like the extent of that, but the idea that they released these books essentially all in one shot, the same way Netflix will drop a new season. I think it's smart. I think it's like you said, they're pivoting towards like the current market.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on TKO, and I think I'm in favor of any new publisher coming on and changing the game. That's why I've talked about this in the chat a lot, but I'm a huge fan of Bad Idea because what they're doing is pissing people off, sure. But what they're doing is like shaking up the industry. And I'm in favor of that in any way, because what they do, it's kind of like, I always say it's like kind of like the XFL. Like you ask somebody, was the XFL a success? People will say no, it was abysmal failure. It only lasted 1 season. It did nothing. But then you really look at it, and the influence that the XFL had on the NFL afterwards was like huge. So yes, it was a failure in itself, and it only lasted 1 year. It was like this little capsule of like a failing football league. But as a whole, it really shook up the industry and shook up what the NFL is doing. So like the impact it had long term was bigger. So I think things like what Bad Idea is doing and what TKO is doing, they might not make an impact themselves. Like they might not be remembered, like in the mainstream 10 years from now. But what they end up doing and the impact that they have on industry, I think will be more than what you can see if you weren't paying attention, I guess, if that makes sense.
Right. And I mean, we've, discussed this at length before. I do think that what Bad Idea is doing is brilliant, honestly. It just doesn't cater to me. Like I said, like I prefer like to read a trade, things like that. sometimes I try to talk myself out of getting singles and whatnot. So like it doesn't appeal to me, which is why, you know, it's not going to get any of my business until they, you know, change and kind of conform a little bit more to like what the norm is. But I do agree. I think it's brilliant. I think they are shaking things up. They're getting people to talk about them. You know, I remember you guys talking about like the eBay prices for some of these issues were like insane because this is like the only way you're really going to be able to get it at this point. They sell out pretty quick. I was talking about all these publishers that I saw on the wall at my shop today. I don't think I saw any bad idea books. You know, usually either my shop straight up doesn't get them or they went pretty fast and there's no spot for them. So
yeah, and that's the thing too, that like people will deride them for their gimmicks and stuff, and they are gimmicky, but like as long as they're not there for every single fan. So if there's fans that are just like, whatever, I can't buy them, that sucks, but whatever, then that's fine. Like they're not there for everybody. So, but what they're doing though is they made a name for themselves. So like just comparing the two comics that I have, Bad Idea and Behemoth, which one have you heard more about? They both probably started around the same time. They're both fairly new publishers. Bad Idea is getting a lot of press because of the things they're doing, and which might be gimmicky and whatnot, but they're also helping shops because they only sell the shops, not bookstores. And like you said, they sell out most of the print runs. So I don't know, like how anybody that's like talking about the health of comic book shops can be upset with that. Like what other small publisher is sending dozens of copies to a shop and selling out of them right away, like on day one? Like there aren't many publishers saying they can do that. So
especially like line wide, it might be like one title,
right? Yeah.
But when you have multiple titles per month that are doing that repeatedly, that like it's, you know, fairly impressive and like worthy of whatever praise it might be getting.
Right. So
on this topic though, in regards to the big two, it's kind of, you know, what I brought up last week to Dan. You know, in regards to DC and what I've seen them do recently is they're doing these like a lot of these mini series rather than every series being an ongoing. They're taking their key characters and making them ongoings and making everything around it like mini series. And I think so far, as I say, Black Manta was the first time I've kind of felt it didn't really work, but so far I think it helps the accessibility insanely. And on top of that, I'm noticing like it is really helping them build to their wherever, as I say, wherever they're going next. Because, you know, if you pick up issue 1, you're like, okay, well, this is only a 6-issue series, so this is 6 months. Rather than going, I'm gonna have to collect this for the next 2 years, you're like, okay, I've got this for 6 months. Or like there's a new Batman and Robin series where you start 3 issues. You go, I've only got this for three months. It means you can plan that. When you stop that, you just pick up another issue 1, you know, and the turnover is quite high. So like, for instance, I think I brought up last week, my partner has picked up a lot of DC because she's finding it easy to pick all these new titles up and follow them because they're not going to like issue like 75. They're going to you know, only 6. But at the same time, if you want to read like Wonder Woman, Batman, whatever, they're still rewarding longtime readers by being ongoings, you know, but allowing easy jump on points. It's not perfect. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I think it shows that they're at least trying, you know. Whereas Marvel, you know, don't do any of that.
Yeah, I didn't mention that. This is my first year in my comic book reading life, which I've been reading comics since literally before I could read. Like my older brother, I'd like flip through his comics and before I can even read words. But this is the first time in my life I ever had a pull list, was this year, 2021. And I did it purely based on the fact that I feel like I've been a comic book fan, I should have a pull list. But I was doing exactly what you just described. I was like only going to do mini series because I do prefer collected editions. And this is purely just for me to like kind of experiment with the idea of having a pull list. And I started off with like, you know, a half dozen or so series that I was going to pick up. And then from time to time, I might add on some stuff. And I had like every Bad Idea book was on my pull list too. So I think I've only added 1 or 2 series to my actual pull list in the time. But yeah, exactly that reason though. Like I do like the finite idea of like, okay, I'm not committed to this thing for the rest of my life, even though you're not truly, but like just the idea that like, okay, I'm going to commit to the series for 6 issues, you know, once a month I'll throw down some money for it or whatever. But like just the idea of it, like everything being ongoing is can be daunting. And that's one of the reasons why I haven't read a lot of modern runs, like I said earlier, is
Yeah.
because like it's just so daunting. And I was without comics for like 5 or 6 years recently. Like it was only like 3 or 4 years ago that I really jumped back into comics. And it was one of those reasons that I was just like, comics, I don't know if they cater to what I want right now. Like the big two comics are all these events, and they're all these, you have to read all these ongoings forever to make any sense out of it. I don't know where to start, where to end, kind of thing. And then I went to a shop. My wife bought me a gift certificate to my LCS, and I stepped in the foot of my shop for the first time in a few years. And I was like, okay, I want something not from the big two that really appeals to me. And it was Jeff Lemire's Roughneck. And I was like, okay, I'll pick this up. I haven't read a Jeff Lemire book at this point. This was a few years ago. And I went home and read it all in one sitting. And then the next day I went out and looked for every Jeff Lemire book I could find. And that's what got me back into comics. So kind of like the same thing with my pull list. It's like I don't want to be committed to these ongoings for the rest of my life. I might read those in omnibus or hardcovers or whatever down the road, but I like the idea of this finite series, and I think that's the way to go. Not only just for the big two, I think for independents too. I think having that on the cover, like I noticed DC's been doing this a lot, and it's kind of what you're talking about. Is like this 3 of 6.
Yeah.
Because that tells you when you're picking this up off the stands, like, okay, there's only going to be 6 of these. That's all you need to commit to. I think more companies need to put that on there, like 1 of 6, 1 of 5, whatever it is. Or like your DC Vampires book, I noticed was like 1 of 12.
Yeah.
Just to know, like, let the reader know, like, because like I talked about with this, like, I don't know how many issues this is going to be. I don't know when issue 2 is going to come out, but DC does a good job of letting you know. And I think that's important too for accessibility reasons. Like if this is my first time in a shop ever, and I'm like looking, I saw the recent Batman movie. I want to figure out what Batman's about, and I see like that on there. It's going to be like a little tag for accessibility. Like, oh, okay, I can pick up 6 of these.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing. Like I've had a pull list for about 11 years now, and there was a point when I was spending about $50 each week on comics. Big two. Now the thing is, I if I'm honest, I've never really bought single issues of indie titles because I prefer reading them in trade format or like a collected edition. I think that like with the big two, I really, if it's done well, I like the pauses. I like the what's going to happen next month sort of thing and waiting. But with indie books, I don't feel that so much. I feel like they're more like movies. I want to read all of it at once. They're not so, like, other than a few, they're not as suspenseful in regards to the gaps, But in the whole time, this is why I keep bringing up this thing that DC is doing. And the whole time, I was actually, I think, about to start drifting off of single issues. And then DC started doing all these miniseries, like, because literally, I think right now I'm only collecting 2 ongoings from DC, and I must have right now like 15 DC titles. The rest are all like miniseries. They're all like Deathstroke Inc. is only 1 of 7, but again, it's clearly is building to something, and then that will be the next miniseries. But it allows it to be easier to collect trade paper in trade format as well, because you're like, okay, well, this would be the first and this would be the second. So it still works in that format, but again, it lets you know how long you're going to be in it for. Because when I was paying $50 a week, I didn't know how long this stuff was going to last. I didn't know when it was going to end. I had to be really strict to myself in regards to jumping off of it. Whereas, like, for instance, Black Manta, as unsure as I am, it's only 6 issues. I've got 2. So there's 4 issues left. It's not like it's going to be like an ongoing forever. It makes me more tempted to stay on till the end, So there's like a lot of merit in there. But yeah, so I think DC is trying, and I think it's a good thing. I think, again, it's I know people who have jumped onto DC because of it, and I think it's probably a good idea more to kind of label how long you're going to be, I think in comics especially.
I think for sure, and I think that's one thing that, and we talked about having a future episode about this, what we think about the industry and what they're doing and stuff like that. So maybe we like table the rest of the conversation for that, because I think it's a great episode. But that's one of the things I feel like manga does really well, is like have volume numbers, and it's just like easy for, if you've watched the anime and you want to read the comic book or manga, you go to the shop, you start at number 1, you go to number 25 or whatever. It's so easy. You can't go wrong with that. So like having that on there is kind of a little bit of a same thing. Like, where do you start? Well, issue 1 of 6, and then there's gonna be 6 total. Like, I just think like those kinds of things are like they're not made for like the weekend warriors or the Wednesday warriors that are in there every week. They're there for like the new fans, and I don't think there's anything wrong with catering to that.
The thing is like with that as well, and not all of them are. Some of them feel like, even like with your Batman, like, yeah, that definitely is catered to new fans. But at the same time, there is a lot of titles that are these mini-series formats that are building off of stuff that's happened before. Or, like for instance, Infinite Frontier, that's a 6-issue series, is fantastic. That's basically a build-up to their next event. That is built off of Death Metal. But if you read it, I think as a newcomer, it probably would get you excited for the next event. Like if you're a comic book, you're wanting to get into comic books and you don't know how events work or what's going on, this is a perfect little mini series for that. But at the same time, as someone that's a big fan, it's got a lot in there that I've enjoyed and that I can see is built from. So yeah, it's like a best of both worlds.
Yeah, that should be the goal, is catering to the longtime fans and catering to new fans. I think a lot of the stuff that puts people off about reading like Silver Bronze Age comics is that those were always written to be every issue could be someone's first issue. It was always the tagline that Stan Lee and Jim Shooter were famous for. So every issue you're kind of getting a little bit of a recap of who Spider-Man is and what happened to him, because they assume that it could be someone's first issue. Well, that doesn't cater to the longtime fan that's been reading Spider-Man for 20 years. It's kind of like talking down to them at that point. So you need like a balance, best of both worlds kind of thing. But I think that's a great way to cap off this episode. I think we talked at length of what we're picking up, let everybody know, the listeners and viewers know kind of what we're about and what the three of us want in comic books. Please comment down below on the video to let us know your thoughts. If you picked up any of these issues, if we sold you on an issue, maybe your thoughts on the comic book industry, whatever you want to comment about. And
let us know if you think we're idiots for not picking up the book that you picked up this week.
Absolutely. I love comic book recommendations too. So exactly what Dan said. If you feel like we're idiotic because the three of us, none of us picked up your favorite issue of the week, let us know that too, because I'd like to know what that is and how I missed it. But yeah, comment down below. So please subscribe to the channel. We're trying to grow our subscription base, so share that with your friends too. We eventually like to do live shows, and we have to have a certain amount of subscribers to do that. And give the video a thumbs up, because that always helps us too in the algorithm. But on our way out, we have Paperback Dan over here. Paperback Dan, you want to say goodbye to everybody real quick?
I do not actually. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, this is good. I enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to next week. So I'll catch you guys later. And
then Connor, you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Yeah, so thanks for the video. Thanks for the chat, and going into all things Batman and Power Rangers and a little bit of Spider-Man, which is a tease for the future maybe. So I might see you for that at some point. And definitely next week. Thank you.
Yeah, and a little bit later this week, we'll have a video where we preview the books that we're looking forward to next week. So look forward to that on the channel. And yeah, everybody have a great day.